How are you? I was going to say good evening because I always say good evening. But this is the one day of the week when it's not about evening. Guten Erev Shabbos to you, my holy sisters and brothers. It's great to be with you as Shabbos is approaching. And today we're opening a new tractate, a fascinating tractate. It's going to be great. Let's light up the darkness. Who is with us as we gather to learn on a Friday afternoon? Stephen in New Hampshire, Bill in mid-Missouri, Gordo in Scotland. Always great to see you here on Fridays, Gordo. Gwen in Michigan, and over there on the YouTube side, Aoife in Florida, right? Ocala, Florida, and Lynn in North Texas. Welcome, everybody. Today's episode of AT Daily is sponsored by Flavio Kaczynski, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, maybe Kaczynski, from Sao Paulo, Brazil. And Flavio is sponsoring our episode today in honor of Israel Kaczynski. Flavio, may you and all your loved ones be showered in blessings. We say amen, and thank you for enabling us to share more Torah with more people around the world. All right, tractate Chagigah. Chagigah. So we've encountered this word, the Chagigah, before, particularly in Tractate Pesachim, the laws of Passover. Because when we go on a pilgrimage festival, and this doesn't apply now because the temple is not standing, but when the temple is standing, so then we see there's a command that everyone should appear 3 times a year: Passover, Shavuos, and Sukkot. And when you come, you should not come empty-handed. Now at Passover, for example, we're going to bring the Pesach. We're going to bring the Paschal lamb or goat. That's the commandment for Passover night. It's going to be slaughtered that afternoon before Passover begins that night on the 15th of Nisan. The Passover lamb is going to feed a group of people who've agreed to share Passover together. And it might not be enough meat for all of them, just the Passover lamb. So there's going to be additional offerings. There's going to be the shalamim, right? The festival peace offerings. And there's the Chagigah, right? So this is an additional offering. And what exactly are the laws of the Chagigah? Is it the festival Ola? Is it the offering of appearance? We're going to be talking a lot about that in this tractate. But what's so interesting about this tractate is just like the one that we just finished, Moed Katan, which was about the intermediate days of the festivals, and we ended up doing a lot of other material about the laws of mourning. Here in Chagigah, there's going to be a lot of other material as well, and it's going to touch on the more esoteric teachings of the Jewish tradition. Kabbalah is kind of a more recent word for the esoteric teachings. When we're talking about the esoteric teachings mentioned in the Talmud, kind of, experiencing the divine, entering the upper realms, etc. There we talk about Ma'aser Merkava, Ma'aseh Merkava mysticism, right? So the design of the divine chariot, sometimes based in the teachings, in the prophecies of Ezekiel, but other places as well. And we'll be getting into that in this volume. Not today so much. Okay, so we're opening. So Tractate Chagigah is another short one, I believe, similar to Moed Katan in length, about 27 pages, right? So Moed Katan was 29 pages, Chagigah is 27 pages, so even a little bit shorter, and also in 3 chapters like Moed Katan was. So we're entering chapter 1 today, and it's worth, before we get into the chapter in the first Mishna, to mention these 3 passages from the Torah, which are going to inform so much of the teachings of this tractate. I feel my face is a little bit washed out. Maybe if I move that light a little further away, it might be better. Okay, so here from Exodus 11:11 and 11:12, 3 times you shall keep a feast to me in the year. right? So these are the 3 pilgrimage festivals. From Deuteronomy 16, verses 10 and 11. And you shall keep the Feast of Weeks to the Lord your God. That's Shavuos. After the measure of the free will offering of your hand, which you shall give as the Lord your God blesses you. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you and your son and your daughter and your servant and your maidservant and the Levite who is within your gates, and the stranger and the orphan and the widow who is in your midst, in the place that the Lord your God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. And this refers to the temple in Jerusalem. So there's this obligation to rejoice in the festivals that applies seemingly to everybody. And then the third one, Deuteronomy 16, verses 16 and 17, 3 times a year shall all your males, right, the adult men, appear before the Lord your God at the place that he shall choose, on the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and on the Feast of Weeks, and on the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, and they shall not appear before the Lord empty-handed. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of the Lord your God that he has given you. Not empty-handed, right? So it's a short page, so we have a moment I can share that classic Jewish joke. I don't know if I've shared it on our show before, but Esther gets a new apartment in Manhattan, and she calls up her friend Mitzi in New Jersey, and she says, I got a new apartment, come and visit. So Mitzi says, I'd love to come and visit. Where am I going? Esther says, listen, you get off the subway at 92nd Street, you'll come up the stairs and you'll see the building with the red door. You come up, you come over, you open the red door with your left elbow. You come in, you push the buzzer button with your right elbow. I'll let you into the lobby. You go to the elevator, you summon the elevator with your left elbow. Get in the elevator, press number 3 with your right elbow. You'll get off the elevator, make a left, walk down to 3H, ring my doorbell with your left elbow. I'll let you in. We'll have a wonderful time. Mitzi says, I'm so excited to see your new apartment, Esther, but what's with all the elbows? Says Esther, what? You're going to come empty-handed? Carrying the platter. So, it's an old tradition, and we learn it from God, that when you go to someone's house as a guest, you don't show up empty-handed. Okay, chapter 1, we're on page 2. Every tractate of the Talmud starts on page 2. That's the way it's done. This is tractate Chagigah, the 13th volume of the Talmud. We're in chapter 1, Mishna 1. All are obligated on the 3 pilgrim festivals in the Mitzvah of Appearance, the command to appear, i.e., to appear in the temple, as well as to sacrifice an offering, right? So it's a 2-part commandment that you're going to appear, right? That you have to come 3 times a year, and that you don't come empty-handed, so you're going to bring an offering. All are obligated in the Mitzvah of Appearance, except for, and here comes a long list, except for a deaf-mute, an imbecile, and a minor, and a tumtum. That is one whose sexual organs are indeterminate, often because there's a flap of skin over the sex organ, and so you can't tell if this is male or female. And a hermaphrodite who has some form of the sexual organs of both male and female. And so there you see that even, thousands of years ago, there were more than 2 genders. These are considered 4 genders in the Talmud. And women and slaves who are not emancipated, and the lame and the blind and the sick and the old, and one who is unable to ascend to Jerusalem on his own legs. And so we see there in that list, it's, lengthy list of people who are not obligated in the Mitzvah of Appearance and to bring the offering, that there are different categories there, right? Some don't come because they're not included in the command. The command is all males shall appear. So if you're not a male, you're not obligated. Others are males and would be obligated, except it's impossible for them to go because they're old, because they're lame, and others because they lack the mental capacity, the imbecile or the minor. Now, the deaf mute, that's difficult for the modern ear because, like, deaf mutes, why would we ever consider that, compare them to an imbecile, somebody of a reduced, cognitive capacity? That's not necessarily the case at all with people who are deaf and or mute. And the Gemara is going to address that, so we'll get to that soon. Who has the status of a minor with regard to this law? Any child who is unable to ride on his father's shoulders and ascend from Jerusalem to the Temple Mount. So it's not about reaching bar mitzvah age, even a small child, but if he can ride on the shoulders of his dad, he's going to be obligated to go. This is the statement of Beis Shammai. And Beis Hillel say any child who is unable to hold his father's hand and ascend on foot from Jerusalem to the Temple Mount, because he has to walk, right? The pilgrimage festivals are called the regalim, meaning that you go on foot. 3 times regalim. Since the term for feet is raglayim, Beis Hillel infer from there that the obligation to ascend involves the use of one's legs. Generally speaking, we follow Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai say the burnt offering of appearance brought on a pilgrim festival must be worth at least 2 silver coins, and the festival peace offering, hold on a second, Chagigah, right? So the burnt offering of appearance must be worth at least 2 silver coins, and the festival peace offering, that's the Chagigah, must be worth at least 1 silver ma. And Beis Hillel say the burnt offering of appearance must be worth at least 1 silver ma, and the festival peace offering, the Chagigah, should be worth at least 2 silver coins. That's the Mishnah. Now the Gemara. The Gemara asks, when the Mishnah states that all are obligated in the mitzvah of appearance in the temple, the term all comes to add what in the Mishnah's ruling? And the Gemara answers, it serves to add one who is half slave and half free. And the Gemara asks, and according to the opinion of Ravina, who said that one who is half slave and half free is exempt from the appearance in the temple, the term all comes to add what? Right? So according to one opinion, all includes one who is half free because his free half, right? This is a Jew. A non-Jew is not obligated to go up to Jerusalem. But a Jew who is enslaved, because perhaps in ancient times he became heavily indebted, he had to put himself in slavery. That's not a permanent condition. After 6 years, he goes free. But this one who has, he has purchased half of his freedom, shall we say, or he was owned by 2 partners, and one of the partners, emancipated him, but he still has the second half owned by the other partner. So the one who's half slave, half free, is he obligated to go up in the pilgrimage festivals? According to the first opinion, yes, but according to Ravina, who says, no, one who is half slave and half free is exempt from the appearance in the temple. So then according to Ravina, this term all, what does it come to include? And the Gemara answers, it comes to add one who was lame on the first day of the festival, so he was unable to travel, but he was healed on the second day of the festival, and this man is obligated to appear before the end of the festival. The Gemara says, well, that works out well according to the one who said that all 7 days of the festival redress one another. In other words, the obligation to appear applies equally on all days of the festival. So if you miss the first day, okay, so you go on the second day and you fulfill your obligation. Consequently, one who was unable to travel on the first day may do so on the second day. However, according to the one who said that the main obligation is on the first day, and all the remaining days merely redress the first, meaning that if you were qualified to bring, if you were obligated to bring that offering on the first day, and for whatever reason, the road was closed and you couldn't get there on the first day, okay, so you bring it on one of the later days of the festival. But if you weren't obligated on the first day because you were lame, for example, then you're not obligated on the rest of the days either. So according to the one who says that the later days of the festival simply are an opportunity to redress the first day, but if you weren't obligated on the first day, you don't have to bring, then according to that opinion, what does this term all in our Mishnah come to add? And the Gemara answers, it comes to add one who is blind in one of his eyes, right? He is blind in one of his eyes, but he can see with the other, so he remains obligated to make the appearance on the pilgrimage festivals and to bring an offering. The Gemara notes, and this is not in accordance with the opinion of this Tana we're about to mention, this rabbi of the Mishnah, as it is taught in a Baraisa, that Yochanan ben Tehavai says, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, one who is blind in one of his eyes is exempt from the mitzvah of appearance, right? Because are you blind? You're blind in one of those eyes. Okay, so you're blind. Not fully blind, but you're blind in one eye, and then you're exempt. And how does he prove this? It is stated, 3 occasions in the year, all your males will appear, yera'eh, before the Lord God. Exodus 23:17. And since there are no vowels in the Torah, this verb that will appear, that all your males will appear, and will appear is yera'eh, and in Hebrew that's yud resh aleph he. So if you vowelize it as yera'eh, that's will appear. But if you vowelize it as yir'eh, it's still yud resh aleph he. But if you pronounce it yir'eh, then it means will be seen, right? Or rather, will see. All your males will see the Lord their God, right? So that word, beautiful word, that, the same letters either spell all your males will appear or all your males will see the Lord God. And so according to, and therefore, says Rabbi Yehuda, this teaches that in the same manner that one comes to see, so he comes to be seen. And just as the usual way to see is with both of one's eyes, so too the obligation to be seen by God applies only to one who comes with sight in both of his eyes. Therefore, one who is blind in one eye is not obligated in the mitzvah of appearance in the temple. That doesn't mean he's not permitted. It just means he's not obligated, right? In all Jewish law, we always have to be very careful to distinguish between obligated, permitted, and prohibited, right? So somebody who's not obligated doesn't mean he's prohibited. It means he's not obligated. It may well be that he is permitted to go. And if you wish, say instead, actually it is as we said initially, that this word all in our Mishnah comes to include one who is half slave and half free. And as for that which poses a difficulty to the opinion of Ravina, who exempts one who is half slave, this is not difficult. Here, it is in accordance with the initial version of the Mishnah, whereas there, Ravina's statement is in accordance with the ultimate version of this Mishnah, right? Because this idea of one who is half slave or half free, is he obligated to appear on the festival? That got addressed on Pesachim 88a, and that maybe is the final version of this command, right, within the Mishnah. As we learned in that Mishnah, one who is half slave and half free serves his master one day and works for himself one day, right? If you're in a state where you're half free, half slave, we don't no longer have this, but in the ancient world, if somebody was half free and half slave, so he would work for his master on Monday and work for himself on Tuesday, for his master on Wednesday, for himself on Thursday, etc. This is the statement of Beis Hillel. Normally, Beis Hillel... Oh my God. I'm so sorry. It's screening. Stop. Sorry. Okay. So normally Beis Hillel is the more lenient opinion, right? Here, Beis Hillel said that the way to deal with a situation where one is half free, half slave is to alternate days, working for himself or for his master. Beis Shammai said to them, you have remedied the situation of his master, who benefits fully from all his rights to the slave, because he gets this guy's time half the time. Right, when the slave was owned by 2 masters, each master had his, the benefit of the slave's labor half the time. So the master's still in that same position. However, now that this man is half free, you have not remedied his situation. The master's still in the same position, but the one who is half free isn't really half free. Says Beis Shammai, you have remedied the situation of his master, who benefits fully from all his rights to the slave, but the slave's own situation you have not remedied. How so? He is unable to marry a maidservant, as half of him is already free, and a free Jew may not marry a Canaanite maidservant. And he is likewise unable to marry a free woman, as half of him is still a slave. And if you say, okay, so he should be idle and not marry until his time of being a slave ends. But isn't it true that the world was created only for procreation? As it is stated, Isaiah 45:18, he, God, did not create it to be a waste. He formed it to be inhabited. How do we know that? Because the first commandment in the Torah is Peru Urevu. It's in the 6 days of creation. Be fruitful and multiply. We're all commanded to be fruitful and multiply. So he formed it, God formed it to be inhabited. So rather, for the betterment of the world, we force his master, who still owns half of the slave, to make him a free man. And the slave writes a bill to his master, accepting his responsibility to pay half his value to the master. And Beis Hillel ultimately retracted their opinion to rule in accordance with the statement of Beis Shammai that a half slave must be set free. Right? So ultimately the sages determined that there should never be a condition of half slave, half free. One who becomes half free, the other master who owns half of his labor has to free him. Now, there's still a value there that the slave owner owns, and so the slave owes him. It's like he's purchasing his freedom, but he gets freed right away. Now he just has a debt to finish paying that off over time. But he's considered fully a free man. He can marry a free woman, and since he's a free man, so he's obligated to go up to Jerusalem during the pilgrimage festivals and to bring the offering. Next topic of our Mishnah. The Mishnah taught, except for a deaf mute, an imbecile, and a minor. Now, the Gemara notes, by listing these three cases together, the Mishnah is teaching that a deaf mute is similar to an imbecile and a minor, just as an imbecile and a minor are among those who are not of sound mind. They don't have full cognitive capacity, either because the mind is disabled or the child is just too young. So too, the deaf mute, cheresh, that's the Hebrew word mentioned here, is one who is not of sound mind. So somebody who's deaf and is of sound mind is not included in this category. We continue. And this teaches us, as we learned in a Mishnah, Terumot 1:2, the cheresh, whom the sages discuss everywhere, is one who does not hear and does not speak, and therefore his mind is not lucid because he's never communicated with people. He can't be communicated with, and he hasn't been able to communicate back. It can be inferred from this that one who speaks but does not hear, right? The one who is deaf but speaks, and one who hears but does not speak, the mute, are obligated in mitzvahs like any other person. And so right away you see that in modern times where we have sign language, okay, that is a person who is deaf but can speak. And so they are not in the category of the minor and the imbecile, and they are obligated in the mitzvahs like everybody else. Likewise, one who can speak but can't hear, that person can communicate, and so they're obligated in the mitzvahs like everyone else. It's really only the person that was never able to communicate. So whether it's through sign language, cochlear implant, hearing aid, etc., all those cases are not the cheresh that the sages were talking about, who is exempt from all the mitzvahs, right? So it's quite different. And here is that home address for that teaching that we've been concerned about several other times, because that often comes up, whether in a particular mitzvah, who is obligated in it, and the sages will always mention, okay, the deaf mute, the imbecile, and the minor is not obligated, but that deaf mute, that cheresh, is somebody who cannot communicate. One who can communicate is not included in that group. And very interesting, by the way, I was reading about this a little bit earlier, so I'd be prepared. So the famous posek Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who is like just the greatest halakhic decisor of the last 100 years, and was asked about, I don't know if it was the cochlear implant specifically or a hearing aid, but somebody, who goes through a procedure and now is able to distinguish sound. So is that person no longer considered deaf, even though they're naturally deaf? Like, they're still deaf, right? The ears aren't working. The cochlear implant, right, is like a magnet that works through the skull and sends signals to the brain. It's a different way of hearing. What was interesting about what Rabbi Moshe Feinstein said is that this person is no longer mute, right? He's not a deaf mute for sure. He can communicate and he is obligated in mitzvahs, not because he can hear, but because he can speak, right? And even if he's speaking with sign language, but he's communicating with people. So maybe the ear still doesn't work. He's deaf, and that's going to have certain halakhic ramifications, but he's definitely not the cheresh who is exempt from all these other obligations. Okay, where am I? All right, so the Gemara notes, we already learned this as the sages taught in the Tosefta of Terumot 1:2. One who speaks but does not hear, this is a deaf person. One who hears but does not speak, this is a mute. Both this one and that one are in the same legal category as those who can see and hear with regard to all matters. And this shows that the cheresh exempted by the sages is one who neither hears nor speaks. And the Gemara asks, and from where is it derived that one who speaks but does not hear is a deaf person, and one who hears but does not speak is a mute? As it is written, Psalm 38, verse 14, but I am as a deaf man, I hear not, and I am as a dumb man who does not open his mouth. If you wish, say instead that this is as people say, his speech has been taken, ishtakel milud le, and the term ilem is an acronym for this phrase. And the Tosefta taught that one who speaks but does not hear, right? One who speaks but does not hear, that's one who's deaf. And one who hears but does not speak, so that's the mute. They are obligated in mitzvahs. And the Gemara asks, well, wait a minute, isn't it taught in a baraisa that one who speaks but does not hear, the one who's simply deaf, and the one who hears but does not speak are exempt? So they are exempt from something, but what? And Ravina said, and some say it was Rava who said, the Mishnah is incomplete, and it is teaching the following. All are obligated in the mitzvahs of appearance in the temple and rejoicing during the pilgrim festival by eating the sacrificial meat, except for a deaf person who speaks but does not hear, and a mute person who hears but does not speak, each of whom is exempt from the mitzvah of appearance, but even though he is exempt from the mitzvah of appearance, he is obligated in the mitzvah of rejoicing. But one who does not hear and does not speak, the cheresh, the full deaf mute, and the imbecile and the minor, each of these is exempt even from rejoicing, since they are exempt from all the mitzvahs mentioned in the Torah, as they are not of sound mind. Right, so there's going to be some allowance made, right, for the one who is deaf or for the one who is mute. They're going to be exempt from certain obligations, but generally speaking, they're treated like everybody else. And that's, that sounds pretty modern, right? I mean, we're going to make, it's very important to our society to make sure that everybody can be included. So maybe that, special dispensation, they're not going to be able to do certain things that other people can do. But when it's time to rejoice together and to eat the meat of the offerings of rejoicing, the one who is deaf and the one who is mute are completely included along with everybody else. Yes, and the opinion is also taught in a baraisa. All are obligated. I'm almost done. Yeah, it's a very short daf, so if you have questions or comments, get them in. The opinion is also taught in a baraisa. All are obligated in the mitzvah of appearance and in rejoicing, except for a deaf person who speaks but does not hear, and one who hears but does not speak. They are exempt from the mitzvah of appearance, but even though they are exempt from the mitzvah of appearance, they are included in the obligation to rejoice. And one who does not hear and does not speak, they go along with the imbecile and the minor, and they are exempt even from rejoicing, since they are exempt from all the mitzvahs mentioned in the Torah. And the Gemara asks, what is different with regard to the mitzvah of appearance that a deaf person and a mute are exempt in this mitzvah? And what is different with regard to the mitzvah of rejoicing that they are obligated in that mitzvah like everyone else? And to get the answer to that question, tune in tomorrow night, Motzi Shabbos, about an hour after Shabbos ends here in LA. So Shabbos comes in tonight, I think at 5:15. It's going to end, about, 6:20, something like that. So yeah, I'm going to try to get on the air by like 7:30 tomorrow night. I think last week maybe it took until 7:45. When we come out of Shabbos, it's always a little bit like, what happened during Shabbos? What do we have to catch up with? God forbid something terrible happen in the world, or just things that have to get attended to. I always read the page during Shabbos, but I can't take notes on it, so I have to prepare after Shabbos ends, deal with whatever other stuff has come up in our neighborhood, in our community, with our family, etc., and then I can go on the air. But it's still pretty early this time of year. It's in the summer that this Saturday night show gets very late. All right, let's see if there are any questions or comments on Chagigah 2. Let's see. Nina's telling me that there were no questions or comments, but there was one off-topic question. Thomas Paul Wade, what would be your advice for having a town that is against other faiths' religions and you are part of that religion? Is it okay to just wear a cap inside your house and only wear it in synagogue to keep from being beaten up, jumped into, because there is a lot of discrimination where I live? Listen, Thomas, first of all, my heart goes out to you. That is a very timely, unfortunately, it's a very timely, relevant question these days. Rising anti-Semitic incidents, rising crimes and attacks on Jews. It seems to be almost a daily occurrence in Brooklyn, of all places. Here in our neighborhood, there's been a lot of crime. I've related many times. I'm part of a volunteer security force. We carry guns in shul. We do that because of a lot of training, and we've complied with all state licensing requirements. We're actually licensed security guards, and it's an exposed carry, and we wear insignia. Not everybody can do that. So you're asking me, in a time of danger, is it all right to basically go undercover as a Jew, right? Not to wear your kippah so other people can see it. One teaching that comes to mind, and we've seen this before, is the Torah provides laws to live by, not to die by, right? So there's only 3, times where, we're like actually obligated to allow ourselves to die rather than break the law. And that is in case of idolatry, or when somebody's saying, kill him or I'll kill you. So we're not allowed to kill that guy to save our own life. Or commit rape, or I'm going to kill you. So no, I can't do that. I'm going to have to allow you to kill me rather than do that. But wearing a kippah, if it's really a time of danger, no one's going to obligate you to do that. So wear the baseball hat. Keep your head covered, right? Really, the mitzvah is to keep your head covered, not to wear a kippah. So if it's dangerous to wear a kippah, so just wear a hat. You don't have to announce in a time of danger, hey, I'm a Jew, I'm a target. If you're a Hasidic Jew with the long payas, the long beard, obviously it's more difficult. And then you really have to take security seriously, and maybe that means don't walk alone at night. And do whatever you need to do to be safe. That's very important. More specific than that, I'd have to do a little bit more research, and hear what the Gedolim, the rabbis who are the knowledge poskim, who make halakhic rulings in our generation, what they're saying about this. But my memory is, if it's to save your life, you do what you need to do, and if it's really that dangerous, then you go incognito. I just wish that we weren't even having this conversation. So sad that there's haters like that in the world. And sadly, we're not the only group. I mean, these attacks on Asian Americans that have been going on in the last few years, terrible. I think, the women in our community will tell you that, women's safety has always been a question, that men often don't think about it, but women do, and perhaps these times of danger should, remind us men that women are always dealing with these kinds of questions, and we should go out of our way to make sure, that we operate in our community as protectors whenever possible. We have a friend who lives up the street, and sometimes she goes to Shabbos dinner at other people's house, and they don't think to walk her home. Well, you gotta think of that. When she comes by us, we walk her home. My son and I walk her home. So, stand up and be counted, guys, and be a protector in your community. Do what you have to do. If guns are not your thing, if that kind of training is not your thing, fine. It's not your thing for a lot of people. But it's a thing for all of us to increase awareness of our surroundings. You should never be walking down the street with your head in your phone, right? Maintain awareness of what's going on around you. Have groups that you can operate with if possible, so you're not walking alone. If it's feasible for you, not a bad idea to make sure there are security cameras around your premises. It's a time to take security seriously for all of us. All right, that's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow night for Chagigah Daf Gimel, page 3. Have a great Shabbos.